Chapter 12, Mycology. Mycology is the study of fungi, the diseases they cause, their traits, unique traits that they have, and all fungi, as you know, they're in kingdom fungi and domain Eukarya. They are decomposers, just like bacteria that are decomposers. Fungi are also decomposers. They decompose the dead bodies of other organisms and release the organic molecules back into the environment. They're not photosynthetic, and they secrete enzymes onto the outside of their body, and those enzymes dissolve again dead bodies of other organisms, and then they absorb those nutrients. That's called saprophytic. They are saprophytic or saprophytic. They're also resistant to osmotic pressure, meaning that they can tolerate high concentration of salt or sugar, unlike bacteria. They also are able to grow in an environment with low moisture, low water content, unlike bacteria. And here in this table, you can see some of the differences that are mentioned between bacteria and fungi, and of course, bacteria being prokaryotic, there are no sterols in their cell membrane, with the exception of mycoplasma, of course. But fungi have sterol, and their sterol is ergosterol. Cell wall component is different, chitin, glucans, mannans, as opposed to peptidoglycan in bacteria. With reproduction, fungi undergo both sexual and asexual reproduction. They produce spores that are reproductive spores, whereas bacteria only undertake asexual reproduction, that's binary fission, and those that have endospores, they're not for reproduction. And again, the metabolism I already talked about, and also fungi are either aerobic or they are facultative anaerobes. Usually it's the yeast that are facultative anaerobe, as opposed to all the groups that exist in bacteria that we have already covered. So fungi can be multicellular. Some of them are multicellular, filamentous. Those are called molds. We have mushrooms, and then we have the unicellular non-filamentous yeast. So we're looking at yeast here. As you can see, yeast reproduce by budding. You're looking at scars left by previous reproduction by budding, and that's a mushroom, and of course mold that is growing on this acidic citrus fruit. And so those are the different forms of fungi. Fungi can be teleomorphic as opposed to anamorphic. Those that are teleomorphic are the ones that both sexual and asexual reproduction is observed in them. Anamorphs are the ones that they are, due to mutation, they believe that they have lost the capability to undertake sexual reproduction, and they only reproduce asexually. Examples of organisms that are anamorphs, there are two here that I'm giving you, Penicillium and Candida albicans. Also, all fungi, the body of a fungus is called thallus. For example, you're looking at this mushroom, you're looking at the thallus. The mold and also mushrooms. So I'm not talking about yeast. Yeast just single cell organisms. But molds and mushrooms, they are composed of microscopic thread-like structures. Those are called hypha is singular. Hypha is singular. Hyphae is plural. So they're composed of hyphae. Hyphae are not visible without a microscope. A mass of hyphae together is called mycelium. There are different types of hyphae. those that are classified based on their function, and those that are classified based on their shape. So for example, we are looking at aerial, also another name for it is reproductive, versus vegetative. So these are two types of hyphae with respect to their function. Aerial or reproductive hyphae are the ones that bear the reproductive structure. Vegetative ones are the ones that their function is to distribute the nutrients throughout to other hyphae and throughout the fungus. Cenocytic versus septate is the classification based on the shape. Septate are the hyphae that have septum. Septa is plural, so septum between the cells, as you can see. Whereas cenocytic, they are non-septate. So if you look at this hypha, you see that there are no septa. There is no septum differentiating one cell from the other one. So the whole thing looks like one multi-nucleated hypha. Okay, whereas what it is that there are no septa, no septum differentiating cells from one another. So this is with respect to function, the two types with respect to their functions, and these are the two types with respect to the way they look. All right, here you can also see under the microscope, you can look at the aerial hyphae. And how do we know they're aerial? Because they're bearing the reproductive structures, as opposed to vegetative ones. These are vegetative ones. These are the ones that are responsible for distributing food. And similarly, the black dots that you're seeing here, those are these little dots. These are reproductive structures that we will talk about later. And notice that the vegetative hyphae are the ones that are inside the media, if you're growing on a plate, a petri plate, or they are inside, say that orange that the mold is growing. The vegetative ones would be inside getting the nutrients. And then with respect to having septum versus no septum, so all of these are examples of non-septate hyphae as opposed to the septate ones. Also, some fungi, not all of them, are dimorphic. Dimorphism refers to the fact that some fungi, including some of them that are pathogenic, not all pathogenic, but some that are also pathogenic, they're dimorphic, meaning that they can exist in two forms, both in form of mold and in form of yeast. So genus Mucor, for example, is what's growing here. Its dimorphism is related to the presence or high concentration of carbon dioxide versus low concentration of carbon dioxide. Whereas we have other dimorphic fungi that are pathogenic, where their dimorphism depends on whether or not they're in the body, they are growing in or on the surface of body where the temperature is 37. So they're yeast-like at 37 degrees Celsius, whereas they are mold-like at 25 or room temperature. So you're looking at this mucor here, which is yeast-like versus mold-like, right? So they grow in both forms. 4 phyla are mentioned in your textbook. The first phylum we start with is called Zygomycoda or zygomycetes. The common name for them is conjugation fungi. And these are the only ones that have cenocytic or non-septate hyphae. All the other ones have septate hyphae. And also fungi reproduce both sexually and asexually, and they produce sexual spores and asexual spores. And those spores have, they're named differently in one phylum versus the other one, and also they look different from one another. And so in this group, in this phylum, the sexual spores are called zygospores. So a zygospore would be, this is electron micrograph image, so you're looking at the zygospore here. Whereas, so zygospore is just one. This is a microscopic slide showing that zygospore. Zygospore is what's inside that zygosporangium. So if you see zygosporangium, naming it zygosporangium, that's where it's coming from. So inside there is zygospore, which is the sexual spore. So how does that form? It forms by the fusion of the nuclei of the opposite mating type hyphae. They're called opposite mating type hyphae. The nuclei fuse and they produce a zygospore, which would be forming inside the zygosporangia. And then eventually a new hypha will emerge from it. At the tip of that hypha, notice that there is a reproductive structure. That's called the sporangium. So this would be aerial hypha because it bears a reproductive structure. So once the spores in here are mature, they are released from that sporangium. The asexual spores that are inside this sporangium, they're called sporangiospores. So they're released, each one will germinate, a new hypha will emerge from it. And this can undertake asexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction from the vegetative mycelium, you see that a new hypha grows and then a reproductive structure is formed at the tip, and then inside sporangiospores are formed, and similarly like that, once they mature, they are released. So you should remember that in this group, the sexual spores are called zygospores and asexual spores are called sporangiospores. These two are two genera in this group. Some Rhizopus species and some mucor species are pathogens, and we will talk about that later. In the lab, we have microscopic slides of zygospore, and we also have microscopic slides of sporangium with the sporangiospores in it. Okay, so this whole thing is a sporangium, and sporangiospores grow in it, and once they're mature, they are dispersed. This is also electron micrograph of a sporangium with the sporangiospores, right? All right. Phylum is called Microsporidia. Microsporidia is unique as a phylum because the members in this group do not have mitochondria. They don't have hyphae either, and they cause diarrhea infection, and also keratoconjunctivitis. You know, conjunctivitis is the inner lining of the eyelid and covering the surface of the eyes. So this is one of the newer, I should say, recently emerging fungal diseases that is causing these two conditions in people. So I will not review the life cycle. All right, and second, the third group is called Ascomycoda or Ascomycetes, and the common name for it is sac fungi, and ascus means sac, and that's where the name is coming from. And like this is a sac. It's referring to these fungi which have these sac-like structure within which sexually produced spores are formed. So their sexual spores are called ascospores, and their asexual spores are called conidia or conidiospores. So notice that they are different, they look different, and they're formed in different places also. Hypha are, all their hyphae are septate. They have septum, separating cells from one another. So again, they're sexual spores, ascospores, asexual conidiospores or conidia. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I Aspergillus 2, 3, and 4. Four pathogens in this group, which I will talk about these pathogens and diseases they cause shortly. Basidiomycota or basidiomycetes, their common name is called club fungi. Again, septate hyphae, something like edible mushroom and all other mushrooms are in this group. They're called club fungi because of these structures. So if you look at under the cap of a mushroom, there are gills under the cap. And at the margin of those gills, you have these structures. Each one is called a basidium, club-shaped structures. So that's where the name is coming from. So because of the presence of all these basidia, this group is called basidiomycetes. At the tip of each basidium, 4 basidiospores will form. These are sexually produced. So that's where their sexually produced spores form at the tip of each basidium. And their asexual reproduction is by fragmentation. The genus you're looking at here is actually Amanita. Genus Amanita is toxic. The toxin that they produce can actually be fatal. People have died from consuming these. And this is called death cap. So that's another harmful fungus or mushroom, I should say. All right, so let's look at lichens. Lichens are, you might remember from your general biology, that lichens are composed of 2 different species. So it's always, one of the species is always a fungus, but the other species is either algae or cyanobacteria. And so lichens form as a result of the symbiotic relationship between either fungi and algae or fungi and cyanobacteria. The cyanobacteria or algae are capable of photosynthesis. They make the food, the sugar, that they also share with fungi. And fungi, how they contribute to this symbiotic, mutual symbiotic relationship is that mutually beneficial is that they provide a roof that's called cortex, preventing these algae or cyanobacteria from drying up. And also they form these thread-like structures. These are hyphae, of course, that provide a nest for those algae or cyanobacteria. And finally, rhizine. These are root-like structures for attaching to, say, a tree bark. And so that's how fungi are contributing to this mutualistic symbiotic relationship. Lichens are very sensitive to air pollution. If you see lichens growing in your backyard, that's a sign that the air condition is good, it's healthy where you live. And lichens are the food for herbivores that live in the Arctic tundra and extreme cold where nothing else can grow. And also what we isolate from them is erythrolitmin, which is what is the pH indicator that is used in litmus paper, and also osnic acid, which is antimicrobial, and this is also isolated from lichens, and they are used. And there are different forms of lichens which you're not required to be able to identify, but there are different types. We are looking at some of economic effects of fungi. Aspergillus niger, for example, is used in food industry. Vinegar is isolated from it. Soy sauce is isolated from that. Trichoderma is the one that is used. It produces an enzyme cellulase, which dissolves cellulose, which is the content of cell wall. and that is used in order to treat fruit juices so they would be clear and transparent. And then also they're used for treating fabrics with it. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is used to make bread and wine, and also Saccharomyces cerevisiae, as you remember from chapter 9, is used in biotechnology, and several products that are used in medical purposes are actually used. They use Saccharomyces as a factory to produce them. And one of the uses is to make hepatitis B vaccine. And then finally, Taxomyces is a genus of fungus where it produces Taxol. If you remember again from chapter 9, Taxol is a substance that is produced naturally by yew tree, but also scientists found that also Taxomyces makes it. So therefore, instead of going to the yew trees to get it, they can very easily get the gene from Taxomyces, the gene for producing Taxol, and then insert it in whichever organism that they want to use in order to have it make lots of Taxol for treating cancer. These are aflatoxin is a toxin that is produced by some fungi that grow on peanuts and other kinds of nuts that induces mutation. Corn rust and smuts are fungal diseases of corn and wheat, and they are responsible for loss of crops. And same thing with grains. Ergot is a fungal disease in grain. These, however, this is called nest fungi, which is, it just looks, I have the picture here because it just looks like bird nests, and that's why it's called nest fungi. And those are truffles, which are edible. All right, so let's go to fungal diseases. So far we just talked about, we gave an introduction about some features of fungi. Fungal diseases are known as mycosis. So mycosis with an E, that's plural. With an I, that would be singular. And fungal diseases are classified based on the parts of the body that are involved in that infection. So just like bacterial infection, when it's systemic, same thing here in fungal infections. When it's systemic, it means that multiple organs and tissues are involved. Subcutaneous means beneath the skin. So that's a fungal infection where the fungus has gained access beneath the skin. And subcutaneous would be more dangerous than cutaneous one, because cutaneous is just infection of fungal infection of the skin or nails, right, or hair. But the fungi that cause cutaneous infection oftentimes cannot go it cannot invade any layers underneath, so they cannot, unlike subcutaneous ones. And they can't really get past the corneum stratum, the very top layer. Superficial fungal diseases are found in tropical areas, and they are usually referred to fungal infections along the hair shaft. And then opportunistic fungi, just like opportunistic bacteria, these are the fungi that do not cause infection in healthy adult with healthy immune system, and if they infect, it would be not even noticed or very short-living, and with really no harm to them. However, for cancer patients, diabetics, those who have had transplanted tissues or organs, or they're suffering from some other immune deficiency, and children, infants with immature immune system, elderly where the immune system is breaking down. So the same group that are susceptible to developing bacterial, opportunistic bacterial infection, same thing here, AIDS patients. And so that they can actually die from opportunistic fungal infection. All right, so the first fungal infection that we're going to talk about is by Cryptococcus neoformans. Cryptococcus neoformans causes meningitis. It's one of those opportunistic fungi because even though people with a healthy immune system, they can still get infected, but they won't die from it. Whereas this is one of the causes of death in AIDS patients, and it's life-threatening in them. This fungus, with all other fungi, you can see that since they produce spores, most often that's how people get infected, by inhaling the spores. And these spores of this specific species is specifically found in soil where there are droppings of pigeons accumulated specifically. Other birds, but with this one specifically pigeons, and so inhaling the spores, and however the fungus will find its way to infect the meninges, and meninges is the layer that is covering the brain and the spinal cord, and so it's invading the central nervous system, this fungus. And without treatment, 90% of the patients, which I'm talking about, someone like AIDS patient, will die within a year without treatment from brain swelling. With drugs, with treatment, 30% mortality rate. Usually it's amphotericin B that is given. And notice that why is this so? This infection is so dangerous. Look at the capsule that this fungal spore has. It has a huge capsule, and you can see how then there is no phagocytosis going on. Our immune system is really basically white blood cells cannot get rid of it. So it is first inhaling, therefore lungs infection first, but then it enters blood, and then it will be localized in the brain and the meninges. The symptoms initially are piercing headache, stiffness of the neck, vomiting, fever, paralysis, even confusion, loss of coordination, and as I mentioned, one of the causes of death in AIDS patients. Recently, Cryptococcus, different species, Cryptococcus grubii, is newly found, specifically even in California and Arizona, and there have been a lot of incidences of this in AIDS patients recently in these two states, and causes systemic infection in them. One of the reasons for that outbreak of meningitis by this specific species, they think these days that is increased, is due to severe drought that California has been experiencing over the past few years. Notice that these are found in soil, and also most, as you can see, we will talk about these other fungal diseases. You'll see that these fungi have high affinity for where there are birds droppings accumulated or bat droppings accumulated, and it's probably the nitrate in there that they find, but they have high affinity for that. Here you're looking at, it says late disseminated, same thing here, disseminated, where it has a spread, right? It has become systemic rather than just a lung infection. And then here is involving the skin in both of these, cutaneous cryptococcus, I should say, in which it says it produces a gelatinous exudate, which is really that capsule and yeah, due to the capsule that they produce. All right, next is by Histoplasma capsulatum. It's called the disease is called histoplasmosis, and this again, like other fungal diseases, inhaling spores. Those spores are usually found in the air of chicken coops, in bat caves. They're in the soil. And so again, in the chicken coops, because bird droppings are accumulated. Again, in healthy individuals, when they get infected, it's just self-limiting, meaning they recover even without treatment. But that's a different story for the specific group of people who I talked about earlier that are susceptible to opportunistic diseases. So in AIDS, cancer patients, immunocompromised patients, that's a different story. All right, and this causes chest pain, cough, fever, headache, flu-like symptoms, tuberculosis-like lesions in the lungs. But here's a disseminated, to skin, onto the skin. Skin is involved now, and you can see it in this form, appearing on the skin. Let me see. Did I show you the map? There is no map here. Here's a map for highly endemic. So the darker area, we're looking at the other side of the United States, where you can, Mississippi, Ohio River Valley, where you can, that's endemic, meaning this disease is always present, these fungal diseases, as opposed to when you go to the vicinity, then moderately, and then mildly. And as you can see over here, this is moderate, this is mildly actually. So like maybe from Central to Southern California and Arizona. All right, let's move on to blastomycosis by Blastomyces dermatitidis. Again, inhalation, just like previous ones, inhaling the spores. So that starts a lung infection, but also another way that this can infect people is by implantation of spores or the hyphae of this fungus. You remember, this is in the soil. The fungus itself is in the soil. So implantation of the fragments of hyphae or the spores beneath the skin, it through maybe a minor cut, and that also starts an infection. So that's why this is one of the diseases that is often seen in farmers, gardeners, those who work with soil. And it causes these ulcers on the skin where it's involved. This one, it says in the hand and wrist, this is disseminated infection, darkly colored tumor-like vegetation, scar tissue on the hand. That's dissemination. This is just local infection, and then after treatment, you can see that it's healed. So again, blastomycosis, the fungus is in the soil, obviously, but specifically dusty soil, again, where bird droppings are accumulated near barns, you would usually find this. And then it causes cough, chest pain, but also spontaneous healing if it's a minor infection in a healthy adult with healthy immune system. But if it's disseminated, it can become fatal, especially in the specific susceptible group of people. And again, this map shows where you have high incidences of this fungal infection. Coccidiomycosis by Coccidioides immitis, another fungal infection, and that is also known as San Joaquin fever or valley fever, because it's mostly seen specifically here in San Joaquin Valley of California. There's a high incidence of that. but also it's found in South America, in Mexico, in American South. So it's usually the spores are found in wind, in a dusty, wind. It's carrying those spores. Sometimes just driving through that area, you can get infected if you're exposed to that wind and dusty wind. So it causes, again, it starts with lungs infection, so coughing, but also weight loss, maybe fever. This one also, usually in healthy individual, healthy immune system individual, they recover quickly even without any treatment. But also it can be disseminated, like in this case, in the susceptible group. You can see it. It says manifested by subcutaneous abscesses in the chest. And then here's what these really beneath the skin. They have these. These are the body itself will form these sphere-like structures with thick walls, where inside you have all those spores, the fungal spores in them. All right, here we're looking at a bunch of different cutaneous mycosis, right? Cutaneous, remember, is the fungal infection of skin, hair, and nails. Those fungi that cause cutaneous mycosis, they're known as dermophytes because they cause dermophytosis, right? Dermophytosis is another name for cutaneous mycosis. So you have three genera involved, and it tells you just based on what part they actually infect. Notice that trichophyton can infect all three, nails, skin, and hair, whereas microsporum, hair and skin, and then epidermophyton, skin and nails, and causing different dermal infection of the skin, cutaneous infection of the body. So for example, you're looking at ringworm of the body, you're looking at ringworm of the scalp, of fingernails and toenails, athlete's foot, ringworm on the cheek, this one, but it could be also anywhere on the body. And this is ringworm of the groin area, that's called jock itch also, that's another name for it. So what is tinea? All of these that you see, these are not species name. These are not species name. That's why you can see they're not italicized. Tinea means ringworm. So these are conditions, name of the condition. So tinea capitis, it refers to ringworm of the scalp. Tinea pedis is ringworm of the feet. Another name for it is athlete's foot. Tinea unguium is ringworm of the toenails or fingernails. And Tinea cruris is ringworm of the groin or jock itch disease. So these are the names of the conditions, depending on, the localized part of the body. Tinea means ringworm, as I mentioned. Oh, something else that I should mention is this, that all of those dermophytes that are able to cause dermophytosis is that they produce keratinase enzyme, and that's why they feed on keratin, and that's why they're infecting these parts of the body where we have keratin. All right, some specific opportunistic mycosis. Mucormycosis. Mucormycosis is also known as, you might have heard of black fungi recently, higher incidence of black fungi, it's called, black fungus infection in India, you might have heard of. A few months ago it was in the news, which correlates with COVID. And mucormycosis is caused not only by genus Mucor, but also by different species of Rhizopus. Okay, And that's the one I was just talking about, that they see higher and higher incidence of what's called black fungus infection. So black fungus infection is really mucormycosis they're talking about. So mucormycosis is one of those opportunistic mycosis. You can see why in COVID-19 patients. They see a lot of it they have seen a lot of it in India. Or in this malnourished, therefore immune compromised, susceptible, and it says in this individual that has little chance for survival, and being a child with a weak immune system to begin with. So lungs infection, but also it can disseminate to involve other parts of the body, and is fatal. Mucormycosis, so it starts with lungs infection, which is pulmonary infection. Difficult to treat, of course, lungs infection, and can be fatal, as you can see. Other opportunistic infections, Candida albicans. Candida albicans is an opportunistic pathogen. It can cause vaginitis in women who've been taking wide spectrum antibiotics for a long time. We have talked about that before in previous chapters. But also this can become systemic in the susceptible group. And pneumocystis jirovecii, which is it kills AIDS patients due to pneumocystis pneumonia. Pneumocystis pneumonia, which for the longest time it occurred in. This is very rare in general population, but in 1980s, doctors noticed that there are unusually high prevalence of pneumocystis pneumonia patients, all originating in LA area, and they had something in common. Those patients, they were homosexual men, and then after that, that's even before they knew anything about AIDS. And after that, they found out that they were all suffering from this viral infection that was destroying their immune system, and that's why pneumocystis jirovecii occurring in them. So this infects the alveoli of the lungs, and so frothy exudate that is produced as one of the signs of it, and of course it can kill them. Excuse me. Aspergillosis by Aspergillus fumigatus. Aspergillosis, this causes ear infection, especially in kids. It causes pulmonary disease, lungs infection. In case of invasive forms or in immunocompromised patients, such as AIDS patients or those who are taking immunocompromised drugs, it can become invasive and cause necrotizing pneumonia. Necrotizing means breaking down the tissue, destroying the tissue. It can also spread to the inner lining of the heart and cause endocarditis. So that's another that can be deadly. And then we have Stachybotrys. This used to be found only in forest floor, damp, decaying tree barks, whereas then they started seeing them in waterlogged, damaged walls of houses, inside houses, and so they produce, the spores can be inhaled again, and is responsible for pulmonary hemorrhage in infants, and it's deadly for them. One thing about Candida I forgot to mention is that Candida is actually resistant to phagocytosis. It can't be engulfed. And this is specifically again in all those the specific group of people which are susceptible to this the invasion of blood, and then gaining access, it becomes systemic, and that can be deadly for them. Candida albicans is also responsible for thrush. Thrush is the white accumulation of these white powdery things that they appear on the surface of the tongue. That is thrush, that is Candida albicans infection. And this is one of the early signs of AIDS. Doesn't mean everyone who has thrush has AIDS, but if they have AIDS, this is the early sign. So, which if a dentist sees something like that in a patient, they would ask the patient to go for HIV test. Subcutaneous mycosis. Remember, this is beneath the skin. So here's an organism, Sporothrix schenckii, and that again inhalation, but it on monocytes, which they're white blood cells in the blood, but they also can enter the tissue. So on monocytes, they can access, they gain access to other parts of the body. They can also enter the lymphatic system, and they cause ulcerations on the hands, as you can see. So these are also found obviously in soil, and usually found in people who work with soil, with their hands, work with soil, like gardeners. All right, so this table is showing you some of those fungal diseases that we've been talking about. For each group, Zygomycoda, we talked about Microsporidia, Skomycoda, and Basidiomycoda. Those were the 4 phyla we talked about, but also anamorphs versus teleomorphs we talked about. Pathogens that we talked about, Rhizopus, Mucor, Aspergillus, blastomycosis, I talked about, caused by galactomyces, histoplasmosis, microsporum, and then trichophyton. I'm just naming the ones we have already covered. Epidermophyton, Stachybotrys, Sporothrix, and then Coccidioides, yes, Candida, of course, Pneumocystis, pneumonia, Pneumocystis, Cryptococcus, and Amanita, which is a deadly mushroom that produces a toxin. Type of mycosis is our type of fungal disease is already mentioned here. So again, I'm looking at it to see that I have covered them all. If you want to read more about these diseases, these are the pages where you can find them. Remember, the description of the diseases are in chapters, anywhere from chapters 21 to 26. So that's why you have the page numbers here. Those are in those chapters, one of those chapters. And in chapter 12, only the names of conditions and the fungi are given to you, whereas descriptions are in those chapters. And that's why I'm covering what I'm covering about the diseases are really from those chapters. All right, so this was the end of fungal diseases. I'm going to stop here, and then I'll start with the next group of pathogens.